In Romans 12:1 and 2, Paul says this: Therefore I urge you, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies a living and holy sacrifice, acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship. And don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect. Paul tells the church, God wants your whole self. That's what worship looks like. I want to focus on the idea of being conformed to this world. One of the most pervasive cultural forces in our lives is media, and we call what we access through media what we're streaming. So here's some statistics about our cultural media consumption. Netflix and YouTube makes up 49 to 50% of all internet data streaming. Think of that. 6 billion hours of YouTube are streamed monthly. Nielsen puts the average weekly TV viewing of an American over the age of 2 years old at 34 to 40 hours weekly, and the Radio Advertising Bureau puts average weekly radio consumption at 14.6 hours weekly. ABC News reports that we check our phones 150 times daily. And in 2013, it was reported that porn sites get more visitors each month than Netflix, Amazon, and Twitter combined. We, as Americans, are working a full-time job with overtime of drinking and media every week from age 2 on. So being conformed is a passive idea in Paul's letter. These are streams that flow through us and we're changed. But I would suggest that we need to let God filter what goes in our stream. I want to share a story with you from my last backpacking trip. I love to go to the mountains and go fly fishing, to leave the flatlands of the Midwest with a few good friends and head to Colorado. There's something spiritually significant that God does there. And with every mile traveling down the road, I can feel the weight of everyday life lifting off of me. As we pass through the last little mountain town and we're going on to these windy, untraveled roads, we kick up clouds of dirt behind us. And as we pull up to the trailhead and climb out of the truck, the air's thin and crisp and it smells like evergreens. The aspen trees are turning bright yellow, and we throw on our heavy packs and begin the ascent. After hours of climbing, we can finally set our backpacks down as we reach the lake that's at the tree line where we'll be setting up camp for the week. It's somewhere between 10,000 and 11,000 feet, and it's just beautiful, and we are exhausted. Now, there's a stream that flows from the lake that we set up our camp by that's crystal clear. It's made up of snow that's recently melted from the icy peaks that shoot up another 2,000 foot above our base camp. And as we catch our breath, we begin to set up camp. Everybody picks a job. Well, I decided to pump water, so I get out our filtration gear. There's this rubber hose that goes into your clean water container and a rubber hose that goes into the stream that you're going to be pumping water out of. And it connects, this rubber hose that goes into the stream connects to the pump at this little plastic nozzle. Now, as I begin to put it on, I hear this quiet snap. And I realize I have just broken our only source of clean pumped water for the entire week. It's a day's hike to the closest place where we can get another one, and then a day's hike back. And we don't have nearly enough fuel to boil water that 4 guys would need for an entire week. So sheer panic just washes over me, and I can feel my heart drop into my stomach. I stare at this tiny broken tap. I've got to go tell my friends about the situation I've just created for us. So it dawns on me for the first time ever on one of these trips in the last 12 years, I put super glue in with my fly fishing gear. And after several attempts and several fingers glued together, I finally get the nozzle reattached. And I begin to pump the water, and finally I see it flowing through clean on the other side. It's one of the most relieved moments of my life. See, even water that looks clean has to be filtered. And when Paul thinks about us and our worldview and what forms it, he warns us about the dangers of an unfiltered life. It'll make us sick, and we'll be conformed to the world around us. He goes on to say, instead of being conformed to the world by living an unfiltered life, that we're to be transformed by the renewing of our minds.